All right, guys, here's another Ask Me Anything. Someone asks, what are the benefits of being self-made versus having or starting a partnership? Well, that question doesn't really make sense once again because being self-made and having a partnership isn't really kind of like, it doesn't really have anything to do with one another. I mean, you could be self-made or be very wealthy to begin with and still need to somehow get into a partnership because it makes sense for you. So I don't think that the two are correlated. But let's talk a little bit about people who are not self-made versus self-made. There's no correlation between success and being self-made or not self-made. There's plenty of people that have a lot of money who have not been able to be successful on their own, right? And then there's a lot of people that have made a lot of money and are self-made, or people who are also still remaining poor even though they started poor. So it's hard to kind of say like, oh, well, because you have money, you're now, it's easier to make money. Yeah, but it's also, it doesn't mean you're going to be more successful because you made some money from your baseline that's higher than others. So whenever we pick on people who have had a very good future, I mean a very good past because of their parents, or have started with a much larger trust fund, we must first, before we even pick on them and kind of think about it as, oh, well, it's not fair, you had money. Well, it's very fair. Let me tell you why. Because every one of us strives to work very hard so that eventually we can provide for our children, right? Our goal is to provide for our kids. Our goal is to provide them with a strong foundation. What you're making fun of or what you're picking on when you are selecting to say someone is not self-made so it doesn't count is you are discarding what someone at some point in the past has done to become self-made. At some point or another, somebody made a distinction to work their ass off or do something that has made them wealthy enough to be able to provide for their family and for the future generations. It does not discredit their work because they've been able to give it to their kids. Now, if someone starts with that baseline, is still a very high baseline, is still humble, and has still done tremendously well for themselves, I'll use Brett David as an example. He's taken his dad's business further than his dad has taken it. He's built a better model. He's grown it past the brand. Now, yeah, it started with a baseline, but it was the hard work that led him to saying he's a successful CEO and is a successful entrepreneur. It wasn't because of the baseline of just having money. There's plenty of people like Brett David who have money who have not done anything with it, or who have just used it to invest or buy cars and just sit on their ass. So the conscious decision to be successful should not be credited or discredited based on the baseline you have to start with. So I highly recommend, before we pass judgment on anyone that has had, money given to them or as a starting baseline, to really think about what we want for ourselves and for our children and for people that we are working hard for. We're working hard to give a baseline to our future generations. We're working hard to give a baseline to our family. Well, that baseline should not be discredited by someone else. So when you're discrediting someone else, you're ultimately kind of opening this up so that someone one day discredits your own children for you having worked your ass off and having been successful. So let's stay real on that. As far as being self-made in partnerships, when it comes to partnerships, regardless that you self-made or have money, they can be very beneficial and they can also be very hurtful. I've said this in other Ask Me Anything, so please look into the library and look up to what makes a great partnership. But a long story short here, just partnerships are about finding people that are not just complementing your skill because you can't code, you can't do this and that, but rather people who are able to support you while amplifying your strengths. Those are the best partnerships that work. So if people are going to hinder you from being able to do what you're best at just because they want decision-making power, those are some of the things that are going to hinder you from being successful. While if somebody says, I have a skill you don't have, so I'll head this division, but I'll help you become even better by being subjective and bringing a great perspective and still staying optimistic with you and pushing each other further, those are the partnerships you want to be having. So I think that really kind of addresses both points of, is there any benefits to being self-made or not? I think that I myself, came from nothing, didn't have a wealthy family, so I had to build everything from scratch. There is certainly a higher feeling of fulfillment and accomplishment knowing that I'll be the first in my family to provide this back for kind of our family in general. But it's something that is not necessary. If my mom would have been very successful and made a ton of money, I would have been equally okay with just kind of piggybacking on that. That's the whole goal, right? Like, multi-generational wealth is the most powerful type of wealth you can have because you've had 300 years to bring something to life. And that is very powerful and should never be discredited regardless of where or at what point the money started flowing in. All right, so how do you how do you approach someone you want to mentor you? Here's the thing, it's really hard to approach people